All right. So as a project manager, I try to, I don't know what else I would be doing at GitLab. This seems like a redundant statement, but one of my job duties is to do a problem validation. And I try to do an opportunity canvas, 1 or 2 a quarter. So this quarter, I would like to focus on an opportunity canvas around validating the jobs to be done with the environments dashboard and the operations dashboard. So the problem or the question that I'm trying to solve is, how are our customers managing deployments in GitLab at scale to non-Kubernetes environments or targets? Just let's take the environment word out of here and just call it a target. When we started asking questions to our customer base around how are they using GitLab to plan and deploy their software products to their customers, we found about 3 or 4 of them were actually going outside of GitLab and the environments list, as well as the environments dashboard, and going to the actual cloud client. So what I want to accomplish in this meeting is walk through the left-hand side and the problem in the business case section here, and flesh out what we want to tackle as the investigation, narrow our focus from both a user flow experience and a market problem experience, and have that inform what our discussion guide will be. I have a little bit of questions in our discussion guide today based off of what I've built out right now. But I would love to kind of go through and talk with you, Hayana, about this problem and how we can tackle it with the environments dashboard redesign effort that we're undergoing. Sound good? Okay, so in this issue right here, this is the issue that Kenny created 5 months ago. It is a really great overview on what are the things that are currently happening between an operations dashboard and an environments dashboard, and the end of user experience that we're expecting out of that. I'm using this as like the landing point to organize our research. And then of course we'll use the Dovetail application to link our customer calls and all of that stuff, because that's now the process we use rather than the UXR insights. So from a status perspective, what I would like to focus on is release managers and developers or development team leads that are responsible for managing deployments. If we can get an operations team perspective in one of the interviews, that could be a good counterbalance as to how do we create a better division between the operations dashboard and the environments dashboard inside of GitLab. Diving right into the problem, consistently when we interviewed users about how they're orchestrating deployments today, they said, well, either a machine's doing it and it's all automated, or it's a manual process where they're going to their cloud client to manage it. So the ability to manage non-Kubernetes deployments at scale is not friendly in GitLab today. So I'm going to call this a pretty high problem, because if we want to improve the stickiness of the end-to-end experience in GitLab, we want to keep customers inside of GitLab. Okay. So I have here that the segment we'll be focusing on, the persona we'll be tapping into, are the release manager and the development team lead. Because as you know, Hayana, when we interview customers, the people who are typically building releases are often like a team manager in the smaller SMB teams, and then release managers in the larger organizations and enterprise. Any questions on the problem statement or the customer that I'm hoping to like tap into? Okay. Are any of these things jogging your memory from like conversations that we've had in the past with customers?
Are you referring to Hayana or?
Yeah, Hayana. Or Dimitri, if you want to, I have no problem with with insights from you too. Really asking Hyana, since we've talked about like the releases page and release orchestration capabilities.
For sure. And to me, this part of the Kubernetes and the non-Kubernetes, I think I close the page. Deployments, I think it's the only part where I don't feel confident from a user experience point of view, and also understanding how would that work, given what the offering that we have right now at GitLab. I think that's a big gap for me. Which means that with the other topics, it's mostly fine. Looking at the personas, and when you mean operation teams, Jackie, do you mean, for example, Marin and his team, or what?
In my head, Marin is actually a release manager.
Okay.
The delivery team here is a very typical release management organization that we have across enterprises. The operations team that I'm thinking about are like the infrastructure only deploy teams, where they don't contribute any code and they're only focused on generating like test environments, deployment chains. They're very focused on the deploy job of a pipeline.
So the technicalities of setting up everything in the background.
And then when we look at like our actual personas, and if we tap into the like there's like security operations, I think that there's an open MR right now to like add more ops, but Allison ops is accessibility and performance. So when we look at a production release, this team is going to be monitoring that release to see how it's impacting the customer experience and the performance of the application. So when we consider what someone's doing when they go to a environments dashboard, which is not super helpful from a release manager perspective, this doesn't tell me anything. And then when I go to an operations dashboard, this might be this is very focused on alerts. You see the little alert indicator. It is less about the pipeline. You have exactly what was updated in the last commit here. So there's like small nuances that are tailoring to what these people care about. So I don't really want to spend a bunch of time validating this dashboard. I would rather spend time confirming that operations teams aren't looking at this dashboard. Because if they're looking at this dashboard, then we need to capture why they're looking at this dashboard so that the operations dashboard can improve its experience. And then we can fully take this environments dashboard and make it more about what people are trying to accomplish with non-K8 deployments at scale. Does that make sense? Okay, because I agree with you. I really don't know how customers who have a single tenant application and hundreds of customers where they're deploying, to a target server. I don't know how they're managing versions across those target servers in GitLab. I don't know how they're managing roll-ups or version bumps. Like other tools allow you to say, hey, I have a customer in New Jersey and they're going to get my geographically approved version for New Jersey that has security patches on it, and that's version 1.25. And then I have a customer in California or in Korea, and they're going to get my West Coast East Asia version, which is 2.25. And that at scale is something you can't really manage at GitLab today. Or if they are, I'm not sure how they're doing it. Okay. Any other questions on that?
Yeah, we're in a document. Are we now? What are we discussing specifically?
We actually just...
It's kind of hard to keep track.
No, I was more like giving a summary of the customer and the problem. So like we're just just these two boxes. We've just covered these two. So
Okay,
diving
thanks.
into like the actual problem statement, I'll read what I have written here, and then we can tie it back to the goals that we have for this opportunity canvas, which will be this box here. So as a release manager or development team lead, I have to work across many projects, environments, deployments in GitLab. This is very challenging to do since there's not a single place to go to see a snapshot of production applications, not just environments. I want to be able to see the health of how my end users view the production environments across many projects and teams. And I kind of want to say something about without having to use Kubernetes or with more flexibility than just Kubernetes deployments. Because if you use deploy boards, there's a lot of flexibility there where you can see your canary roll out. You can, like, you have more high touch experience. So I may add that point here in non-K8 deployments. So what I really want to tap into to unlock here with this opportunity canvas and solving this problem is identifying where we can separate the operations and environments dashboard, both technically and from the user flow experience, and how we can create conduits to the environments dashboard. So as a user, how can I be presented to the environments dashboard in a low friction way to triage, to action across multiple groups and projects? Then the second perspective that I want to leverage this experiment for, or this research for, is to identify how users are managing environments and deployments at scale. And I really do want to see even Kubernetes deployments at scale. So maybe my third goal here is going to be unpack the non-K8 experience in GitLab.
Quick question, Queen. These things you talk about sound a little bit like jobs to be done to some extent, or user stories. Like, is it like, do you have those already documented, or is that part of this process in any way?
I'm sure that the current jobs to be done we have for release orchestration will chip away at what we discover here. So we'll get insights that relate to specific jobs to be done that we already have defined. But from my perspective, I'm going into this without a particular job to be done because I want to know what they're actually trying to accomplish when they go to GitLab to manage a deployment at scale. After we walk through that experience, we may create related jobs to be done with jobs to be done that we already have. So we have like a release management job to be done if I want to deploy production changes so that my customers have a really positive user experience with my application. That's the entire like motivating force for release orchestration. So I could see a related sub job being when I want to manage a non-Kubernetes deployment. But again, that's getting very solution specific. So really it's more like a user story rather than a job to be done.
Thanks.
So Hannah, would love your thoughts on the problem statement. And if you feel like this overlaps too much with the CI/CD dashboard, what I'm trying to zero in on here is not talking about releases or pipelines or CI/CD. I'm getting like hyper focused about deployments and environments. And what I wanted to hear if you feel like this was duplicative of any of the CI/CD dashboard work that we're doing.
I think my only concern, because let's start with the concerns, is introducing like a different view for similar personas. Because when we talk about the CI/CD dashboard, it's really at the group level, and I think we briefly discussed this. And this one is at the instance level. And I wonder if after our discovery, after this investigation, we could find ways to, I don't know, maybe play around with the how users navigate or filter this information so that we can build, for example, this at the instance level, and then you always have the possibility as a manager or a director to have the access to this information. Since it's so connected, Like you have the deployments, okay, it's not necessarily for the release or the things that we want to show for the release status on the CI/CD dashboard, but still it's a similar overview and a similar entry point that I think that makes more sense to the, yeah, the common data. And I just wonder how people would find having two dashboards that
Well,
look at the environment's deployment. Yeah.
yeah. And remember whenever you and I were talking about maybe these all get combined in the end from like a solution. So
Yeah.
what I want to do is like, I put those as risks. Like, well, we do have another effort that we're planning right now. And what we don't want to do is cause a user disruption. So I think that's a risk from how do we not cannibalize existing efforts with this new solution, but to like take a step back from the problem. Do we feel like the problem we're solving or researching has already been done or is duplicative? Or do you feel like it can be complementary to what we've already done?
For sure, I think it's complementary. I think it's yeah, we definitely focus in a different, let's say, flavor of the problem. Especially that with the releases and the CI/CD, we don't really go in depth in the non-Kubernetes deployments. And if we want to spend, yeah, our offering that direction, I think that's it's valid to do for this dashboard. And also to highlight that we know that the analytics and I think the I got so many teams.
Value stream?
No, it's the which team is Maria's from? Maria is from Configure.
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's also discussions about dashboarding related to CI/CD. So yeah, just make sure that we are aligned there as well.
I will.
There's an issue for that. I'll add to the documents.
Okay. That's really very insightful from a business case perspective for me, because of one, like when we look at our target market, these will likely be the same personas, but a different level. So like the CI/CD director dashboard, the audience is an executive persona. So we're looking at quality analytics about releases, your team, your pipelines globally. And in my mind, this is about tackling the day-to-day release manager job and the development team lead who is a step below the director. So they're not really caring about analytics and they could care about analytics and trends over time, but this is more about like, what is my current state? What is on fire? And how do I get it fixed as fast as possible? Mm-hmm. So maybe that can be a part of the pain that we try to articulate in this case, is that today we have tools for project level management, but multi-team okay, that's helpful. Mm-hmm. All right, I think I feel pretty good about the problem, about what we're trying to unpack here. I did note in the confidence section the points that you did say, Hayana, around making sure that we don't introduce another view to cause friction for users, reconciling this against the goals for the CI/CD director dashboard, and then working across teams. Is that accurate from what you were saying? Okay. Let's dive into how I perceive the pain of the users, and would also love your perspective as well. When users are navigating project to project and going from environments, views, pipelines, and failed jobs to triage a problem in their deployment, they're spending an immense amount of time in GitLab sifting through granular detail, and they're not able to appropriately delegate or effectively triage problems at a global level. So today they're having to go into a failed pipeline notification, drill into the job log, and then send that screen to somebody to fix either an issue or a Slack message. So that's typically like a triage flow from a failed deployment. But when you go to the environments dashboard today, what does this tell you? Today it tells you that of the things I have selected, which is across 7 projects and 3 environments per project, this is where they're at. It doesn't, I will have to go in this and add and remove projects to view all of the projects in my group and only identify the production environments instead of having like a natural hierarchy where this page is like responsive. Like for example, if we were to have an automatic filtering of like production environments that are failed so that they can triage it at the top because that's what they want to do. And I'm getting into solutioning a little bit, but my point being, there isn't a way today to see where are all my failed production deployments or pipelines. Like where are those? I can go to a pipeline view inside of a project. I can go inside of my cloud tool that will let me know that my production environment is down. And that's typically what customers are doing. So the 2 pains that transpire out of the inability to see across all of my projects and my deployments are that I'm spending an immense amount of time sifting through problems to then assign to somebody else, rather than efficiently being able to click on like this production environment button and then send, you know, this particular production that could be shared by multiple projects and groups is down because of this job.
That's one thing that, like looking at our offering in general, is that sometimes I feel like the features could be smarter. As a user, of course, I'm super biased, but I would rather, for example, land in a dashboard, like what you're saying, with the things that were pre-selected, and then I can remove my projects. And Nathan talked about this a couple of times on the way, also how we configure things in the CI file, that we don't really let users know at a glance that's how things can be added or how they can be configured. So I wonder if, like what you're saying for the dashboard, is something that we should look also into how our competitors are doing and ask users what they would expect to see. Like, would you rather add your own projects because you know what you want to configure, or do you want everything to be shown to you and then, yeah, have the option to just filter, remove this, the groups, the projects, the environments.
Okay. What I captured from that statement is, in general, the features can be smarter in GitLab. There's not a guided out-of-the-box experience for triaging and trouble deployments, resulting in expensive time and potential downtime costs.
That's exactly what I say, but in better words. I need you, Jackie.
I think like you framed up the user experience problem beautifully, and then I just put a result on that. So is that fair? Do you feel like we're not quite accurate? Okay. You're the best. Putting words into your mouth. Okay. You said it as well in the workaround that customers aren't using these tools in GitLab. They're having to go somewhere else. I also slated that they're leaving GitLab to view their production environment in AWS, GCP, or IBM tools, or their server client. So some people are using like VMs or just bare metal servers, and they're going and watching performance or metrics from those clients and not using Prometheus and GitLab, because they can't really see the relationship between a shared production environment. Like when we think about a mobile application and a web application, sometimes customers want to view those as a single customer experience, but we don't have the ability to like link those production environments, like especially if the web app is not a native application, it's a responsive web app. So it really is like the same application, just on different devices. Additionally, like a production environment from a microservices perspective can be several different services feeding into that production. But today in GitLab, you'll have several different projects, all with the same URL, but the environments dashboard will populate 7 different environments. So there isn't a great way to say that this environment shared, which we'll be fixing in the next couple of milestones, from the ability to share a target environment. But managing that across hundreds of projects, where really it's only like 6 or 7 customer experienced productions, right? It makes it virtually impossible for people to be like, okay, what is the health of my production environment? Not just the health of this one service that's contributing to the production environment. Any other things that you could think of in the workaround? Okay. All right, let's dive into some learnings. I left this one blank because I think that your assumptions, having been in both verify and release as a designer, might be a little bit different than what mine are going to be. So I'm really interested in hearing like how you perceive people working across environments at scale. So for example, one of my assumptions will be people are hesitant to use GitLab for production tracking as a microservice company, not using K8s, because we don't have tools for seeing shared environments for production states. And I typically fill out the what we thought after I do the business case and after we do some interviews, because we won't know the solution. We won't know what it meant for the solution until then. What else are you assuming about operations and environment dashboards, that those are being why they're connected and how users are experiencing those?
I think my first assumption is that people don't really know the difference between them. I think that's the whole the problem statement, and that as a tool, we don't really empower users to figure that out.
I love it. Yeah. Can I say users don't feel empowered to use our tools to manage deployments at scale?
Because we had a couple of interviews in the past where you talked about environments and people were like, what is environment? Was it environments with GitLab, or we had some?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a survey and people are like, yeah, I don't really know what environments are. And that was like the most eye-opening thing, is that these people have hundreds of environments and they're actively deploying to them, but they said, I don't know what environments are. And it's like, how do you know? How do you not know that?
The title of the page.
I know. They're like, I've actually never seen my environments list screen because I'm going to a different tool. And I'm like, oh no, that's the worst thing to hear as a product manager. I'm actually not using that. No, I am, but I don't know I am. Yeah. Okay. So some bullet points that I'll put from what we thought for the solution. So we either need to integrate the external clients better, or we can provide global views, or we can consider this, we can consider adding something like release application modeling, which is a very common legacy way of visualizing your application. So I'll put these kind of just loosey-goosey ones, and then we will have that be validated or removed for each of these cells after we do some interviews.
When you mention release application modeling, what exactly do you mean, Jack? I'm trying to visualize that.
Yeah, let me pull it up. Have you ever seen like those UTM, like little database cylinders and like a Python icon? It's kind of like a, let me see if this is it. Yeah. So this is like an application model where you have like a site, and then you have the database here, and then you have an external integration, and then a backup system. And then this is like an API that goes to a partner site. And these are the actions that people are expecting to interact with your application. It's a context diagram, and like this one's probably a little bit better because you have the client and all the sub-services. And you can see like it indicates access, meaning that it needs to authenticate. So like that's an authentication service. We don't offer anything like this in GitLab, right? And this is a very legacy way of viewing applications. But ZB Labs offers something similar. Jenkins has some visualization tools there. I think some other, they're just diagrams that allow people to, flow their application.
No, that makes it more clear. Thank you.
Okay. And then people don't know the differences between operations dashboards and environment dashboards. What do you think that might mean for what we need to consider doing? I think that there's a couple of options. One of them being that we need to break these experiences. We need to retain the experiences, but add a different view for deployments at scale. What else do you think?
No, my initial thought is really around break the experiences apart, because when you look even at the UI, everything that is displayed looks very similar. So I wonder if when we talk about breaking this to different experiences, if the user interface also needs to be updated so that users actively know that these dashboards do different things. Dimitri, you are the father of the environments dashboard.
I'm sorry, we're like killing your baby right now.
No, I'm happy to see it change because it has been floating around way too long in its current state, I think.
Do you remember like anything, because I think this is almost 2 years old. It was maybe the first big thing that I inherited from you. But I asked you, I actually say sync before, but do you have any memories of this relationship between these two dashboards and the influence that it had in the user experience that we have today?
It's an interesting question. I find it hard to answer because as far as I remember, for the first at least like 6 months or so, it got zero use as far as I know. So there wasn't much to compare or influence at all. And then at some point, people began to use it, but I'm not sure why that exactly happened. I think it was then already in your hands at some point. Also, there was the environments dashboards and the operations dashboard, right? I think I only worked on the environments dashboard, but not the other one.
Yeah, that one I think we inherited from Andy. It was Andy's designs. So it was like secure. I don't know which team. It was a different name of
it
the
was
team.
APM Dove, I think, did it. So
Yeah.
monitor.
Yeah. So from as far as I remember, what I inherited was really like, okay, here's the dashboard, here's the data points that we need to show. Let's just copy whatever we have built.
Yeah, I still remember that, like, part of the reason we implemented in the way that we did it, which was on the user level, not on the group instance or project level, was based on engineering scope. It was just easier to do that. So there was less influence on, like, what does that mean for the user experience? No, this is easy. Let's go for that. Which I think it is an inherent wrong approach. But again, this was a rushed, kind of like a rushed thing as well. So it was like, all right, what can we do? Let's do at least something. So there's something for that as well.
Okay. I'm just adding some impact notes. Given that we'd be expanding our persona here, part of our assumption of users not feeling empowered to use our tools at scale, once we unlock this assumption and we allow them to effectively do that, we can be opening up that persona into GitLab, and that would mean companies would want to expand their seats. We know today that around 40% of the CI accounts aren't deploying or aren't releasing with GitLab. They're not orchestrating their releases out of GitLab. They may be packaging a binary and then shipping that to Artifactory and then deploying it to production. So they're building, but they're not deploying straight out of GitLab. So part of that limitation is around being able to see things and control and manage at scale. So from a solution perspective, I think that we have probably two main options around empowering users. One of them is around powerful documentation on how to plan and track deployments in GitLab. And I also think that the other piece is providing a view into that. Anything else? Hi, Anna.
Well, so that's one, providing a single view. Yeah. And I think in general, not only the documentation, but helping guide users so that there's more discoverability when, for example, they don't necessarily need to use the environment's dashboard, but in the environment view, you can learn about this other feature.
I love that. So I'm going to put helping with discoverability of adjacent features. Okay, love that. Any other?
Do we have an emphasis on the? Sorry. Do we have an emphasis on, like, showing users the value of like, for example, the tools that we offer? Like, I like that Hayana said at the beginning, like, an out-of-the-box experience. So we kind of guide the users, but do we actually have an emphasis on showing the users, like, hey, if you use this correctly, or, as we indicated, we have this in mind, when you're using it, it will deliver you this, and this. Like, it's gonna.
Yeah, I love that. So from what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, like actually showing the users of the ROI of using GitLab. So having that fill back into the value stream of, like, tracking or being able to actively deploy with GitLab. Okay.
I just want to add my thumbs up to the documentation on how to plan. Not necessarily just here's the environment dashboard, but how do you plan, your deployment with GitLab and tell the whole story. And that's where we can connect also with the progressive delivery functionalities. I personally, when I have to learn something about the product, that's what I miss. What can I do with this? Where can this take me? And yeah, focus a little bit more on the user flow. So thumbs up.
Perfect. Thank you. I felt we got so much more engagement after I released that blog post on how to automatically release with GitLab around our YAML generation. We had people testing the alpha version. And I want to inspire people to give that feedback and contributions. And I feel like the more content that we can create and empower users to feel like they have a voice, like this is work in progress versus just shipping something that's full, I think will be really powerful and compelling for users. Okay, so if you think of any other assumptions, Hyana, the stock, you have edit access in here, so feel free to like add a bullet point and comment on me, and then comment to me, and and I'll respond and fix that. We have about 5 minutes left. Let's dive into the business case. So from our reach perspective, I did a couple number crunching inside of Salesforce, and we have like 75% of our base with greater than 100 users deploying several times a day. So we know customers are deploying at scale, but we know that they're not actively using the environment's dashboard, or we also have been confirmed with several interviews that they are using other tools outside of GitLab to manage production deployments. And this is where like Ori and Progressive Delivery is building out these templates for better target experiences in GitLab to reduce that friction. So this is a common understanding across the release team. From a reach perspective, I think worst case is we won't get an immediate adoption of the environment's dashboard because we will need to compete with the existing workflow of users leveraging their existing tools, which are the clients, unless if our solution ends up being like integrating with the client. So this is something that we'll need to consider in the solution. I'm not going to say that integration with an AWS client is out of reach for us. Of course, it wouldn't be in the scope of the environments and operations dashboard redesign, but it would be something for us to like, how do we provide linking into those clients easily from the dashboard? So for example, how do we add a URL to the client so that they can click on it and then it authenticates with GitLab as a user, and they can then view their deployment from the AWS. So like that's a flow that we could consider linking from the dashboard. So worst case, okay. We talked about impact a little bit, but from my perspective, this won't be a new IACV, new bookings kind of focus. Rather, it'll be a a focus on expansion and upsell. Any questions on why I believe that, why I think that?
Tell us, why do you think that?
Okay, so generally, new deals are expecting parity with their existing tools. So prospects would come in with the expectation that GitLab will be able to support their use case out of the box. This functionality will be very geared toward orchestrating and planning the way that you do GitLab deployments. And as a result, we're not going to necessarily intuitively meet their expectations on how they're managing deployments in Jenkins today. And we have this friction point every time that we talk about building from Jenkins into GitLab. So there's going to be a transition that won't be immediately attractive or sellable to users. But I do think that the environments dashboard is already in premium. So we won't be like upselling tier value. It'll continue to be in premium. We will be adding more seats because we're introducing more personas. We're going to be appealing more to the release manager and making it easier to deploy to non-Kubernetes deployment. So existing users will find that particularly attractive rather than prospects who are cloud native already looking at GitLab. Does that make sense? I'm going to say that we have a fairly medium confidence as it ranks now in being able to deliver some sort of solution to this problem. Like, I think that we can chip away at users being able to effectively manage deployments at scale in GitLab. I don't think this is an unsolvable problem. I think when it comes to the solution section, that's when we'll have to like think through what is our next iteration for this and how much of the problem will be solved with that iteration. For me, from a urgency and priority perspective, I think that we need to ship the remainder of our deploy freeze and the UI experience. We need to support group environments and support group releases. And then this is third in line. So I would say 13.5 would be our expectation of shipping designs or mocks for whatever new experience for implementation in like 13.7. And my goal would be that we could, look at 13.8, 13.7 being the iterations that we improve. What do you think about that?
So you would enter workflow design in the 3 milestones.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, to me, it makes sense, especially that deploy freeze in UI, we have the UX for at least a couple of more iterations.
Yeah.
And group releases, it's ongoing, but I wonder, can you refresh my memory, Jack, about group environments? Where are we at right now with that?
I think it's just assigned to 13 to 13.4. Support environments at the group level. And it's not in your Epic yet. I think our expectation will be that after we speak with Jake on like the redesign features, I wanted to give you enough bandwidth. We can move that Epic out and then we can put this issue into your design.
Yeah, because with this one, I haven't updated the source structure here, and it doesn't have the prototypes.
Mm-hmm.
But once we have those open questions, I think it's fine. Okay.
And in my mind, like that is absolutely something that we need to ship before we can work on this, because it would be pretty useless being able to not share a production environment. Like that's a part of the problem, is that you see 7 production environments, even though it's really just one production environment, it's just shared, right? Okay. Awesome. Well, that wraps up this meeting. We're 2 minutes over. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share and stop the recording.